Does it say we're live?
No.
It should.
Oh, hang on. Yeah. We'll be starting shortly.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're live.
Okay.
It's not just movement, it's making time.
I don't think it's got my camera on. If you can all hear me, if you can see me, I can't see me over there, so I think you can't see me either. So just give us just a second. I have no idea what's happening. Okay, so if I just get rid of this.
They can hear you.
They can hear me, but they can't see me.
No.
Okay. There we go. I think I figured it out.
There's no picture.
It's black. Can't be black.
Okay, you're good.
We're good. We're good now? Okay. It's that 20-second thing. There's a 20-second delay. Okay. Hey, everyone. Nothing like a technical issue to throw a wrench into it. Can everybody see me and hear me? Somebody just type yes, I can, and then we'll be good to go. Yeah, we're good? Okay, awesome. Perfect. For those of you who are here, thank you for coming on a Friday night. Sorry about Monday. I tried. It just wasn't, Monday just wasn't in the cards. So better late than never, right? Okay. So tonight, it's not going to be too long. I just want to show you, I'm going to show you two things actually. We're going to patch or lengthen batting, but we're going to do it right on the frame because I'm sure at some point, some of you at some time have, gotten almost to the bottom of the quilt and you realize that you may have loaded your batting the opposite way, or you just didn't cut enough and it doesn't come right to the bottom. Or if it got cut off the roll sort of, a little sideways, and as you're coming down, it's scooching in, and then you're missing a spot on the side. So we're going to lengthen the batting going horizontally, but this method that I'm going to show you is exactly the same if you're going vertically as well. Okay? And then we're also going to lengthen the backing, because sometimes, for whatever reason, either you've mismeasured or you've put your backing on one way and accidentally turned your quilt top the other way, and you get down and you realize that your backing isn't long enough either. Instead of taking it off the frame and putting it back on and setting up the pantograph again and doing all that kind of stuff, you can actually piece the backing right on the frame. I've been doing it for years, and it really is a lot easier than some of you would think. It's easier and faster, actually, than taking it off the frame and attaching it with your domestic sewing machine. Okay? So, Lydia's here again. Say hi.
Hi.
But if anybody has any questions, when she asks them, I will repeat them. Somebody asked me last week if I could repeat the questions that are asked, just because they couldn't hear her very well, and I apologize for that. I meant to do it, and then I guess I just got caught up with listening to her ask me the question, and then I forgot. So, but I'll try to remember to do that. please feel free to ask questions at any time, and let's get started, okay? So I have a faux quilt going on here. Nothing's quilted at all. It's just solid fabric. I did base down the sides just to give us a little realism there, but basically my backing and my batting are too small for my quilt. All right, I'm going to flip my cameras around so that you can see what I'm going to do, and then we're going to go from there. There we go. This isn't working either. There we go. They can only see one. I can only see one, which means they can only see one. Oy, oy, oy. This one. Yeah, but I want them to see the side one as well. And I don't know why the two cameras aren't coming up. Okay, well, we're going to go with this view, because I think you're going to be able to see better with this view. Is this where you can see me from? Oh, right, you've got the delay. Okay. All right. Well, we'll give it a second. That's the screen I can see, which means that's going to be the screen you can see. Yeah, okay, we're good. All right. We're just going to use one camera. I don't know what's happening over there, but I don't want to keep messing with it because I don't want to lose it completely. It's very strange. Okay, so you're quilting down, and you realize that your batting doesn't come to the bottom of your quilt top. That sucks, right? All right, so the easiest way, you can whip stitch it together. I know a lot of people who will actually stitch it on their sewing machine. You can do that too. I use batting seam tape actually, and I will patch it right on the long arm. I use my ironing board, and I also use a board that I made years ago. I went to Home Depot and I got a big chunk of pressboard, chipboard pressboard, and I got them to cut it to, I think mine is about 30 by 60, about 30 by 60. It's just a big chunk of pressboard. This is awesome for pressing backings, cutting. You can put a cutting mat on here. And I just put this right on top of my regular old ironing board. And it creates this great big table. So when I got it, like I said, I got it at Home Depot, the chunk of board. And I took it to the back, and the guys will cut it for you. So I told him how big I would like it cut, and he cut it. And then it has 2 layers of batting, just regular Hobbs 80/20 batting. And then I happen to have the ironing board cover stuff, but if you don't have that, you don't need it, okay? You can just cover it in muslin. So I used a staple gun, 2 layers of batting wrapped around and stapled gun to the back, and then you can cover it in just a layer or 2 of muslin, or if you can get your hands on some of this ironing board cover stuff, it's that silver, I don't know what it's called, it's that silver stuff. This is so old. It's got cuts and rips and all kinds of stuff in it. And I don't use it much anymore, but when I do use it, or when I need it, it's really, really handy. It's big and it's tall and that, but it's only, this thick. So it just goes behind a cupboard or up behind something else. It doesn't take up any space. So it's easy to store, and it's not attached to my ironing board, so I don't have to worry about, trying to find somewhere to keep it. It just goes up against a wall. Okay? All right, so I've got that. Drop that on top of there. And I'm going to take my sandwich, my quilt top, and my batting. And I'm going to get rid of the top. And I'm going to lay it right here. That whole camera thing really upsets me because I worked really hard to get the back camera really just perfect. And you can't see it. Oh well, such is thing. All right. So I've got this jammed up against my frame. Raise it so that it matches. And we're just going to lay this piece of batting here. I've got my extra piece. And I'm going to lay this piece over top of this piece. And I overlap them a little bit, okay? Maybe a hand's width worth. Ooh, that's hard to say a bunch of times. Hand width's worth. I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 inches, whatever, depending on how much you have and how much you can afford to use, okay? If you've only got a little bit, then you have to work with what you have. So I've got an overlap there. It's probably a little big, but there's an overlap, and that's what we want. Then I'm going to use my batting scissors, and I'm going to cut through both layers at the same time. And the reason we do this is so that both pieces of batting have the exact same cut. So we're going to be able to butt it up perfectly, and there's not going to be any gaps or overlaps or anything like that. Okay? So just cut down it. Then I'll go from this side. These batting scissors are awesome. They're huge and they're ergonomic. So I've got my 2 pieces there. Now I'm going to get rid of this piece from this one. And then I'm going to take this piece back and pull this one out of here. And now when I get them together, they are perfectly going to fit together because they have the same cut. Okay? Just kind of play with them a little bit so that you get them to kiss up against each other so that they fit. There we go. Perfect. And then as I'm putting the batting seam tape on, I will fix that bit at the bottom where we've got that gap. It's just because it's pulling off of here. If I lift this up and I don't have any weight on it, it won't do that. There we go. So even if you can't see it, there's like a little jit here where I sort of wiggled with the scissors. Because they were both cut at the same time, that's in exactly the same place on both pieces. Okay? Now, batting seam tape is, it's fusible on one side. Do that. This is the stuff I have. And it's almost like a mesh, like a gauze. Fusible on one side. It's super, super lightweight. It fuses really, really well. It's a permanent fuse, so you don't have to worry that it's going to come apart. But it's also really, really soft, and it's really, really thin. So once you've put this together, you're never going to know that this is even in the quilt. When I first press it down, I'm going to use a little bit of steam, and I'll press it down. It kind of flattens, but as soon as it gets cool, it cools off, the batting fluffs back up and it regains its loft. So you're not going to lose any loft either, okay? I'm going to take a piece, the same width or same length as width that I'm working with, and I'll cut it. And then I like to just make sure that everything's tucked really nicely together and that I don't see any gaps in my batting. And then I've got my handy dandy cordless iron. You can steam, and I just hold it there for a minute, and we're just going to steam it down. This stuff is so much faster than taking it to a machine and doing a zigzag or anything like that. It's more stable than a whip stitch as well. And like I said, you can't feel it in there. It's just fabulous. So I just give it a couple seconds for each one, and I just sort of walk it up. When I first started using it, I was a little worried about it, so I used to put it on both sides. You don't need to put it on both sides. That's overkill. One side's fine. There. I'm going to let that cool just for a minute. So I don't know if you can actually see it on the camera, but I can actually see my marks from my iron, and it's flat, but it won't stay that way. It'll fluff up. And that's all there is to that. We can use these for something else or not, depending. Actually, keep these things around for rubbing chalk. If you mark your quilts with the white chalk, use your batting scraps for that. It's got a little bit of a, it's not rough by any means, but because it's got a little bit of a texture, it works really, really well for rubbing chalk off. There we go. That's all there is to that. And then that will already, I can already see now that it's cooling off, my walking my iron across, the marks from that have already come out, and it's just fluffed right back up. Cool, right? Does anybody have any questions so far? No? Any comments?
Yeah, there's a question. Dawn says, do you have to put the tape on both sides? Answer.
Oh, Dawn asked if I have to put the tape on both sides. No, you don't. I used to when I first started using it. I thought I would have to do that, but you don't. One side's just enough. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it works really good. And you'll never know. When you've quilted the quilt, you'll never know where that is. You can't feel it. It doesn't leave any, it dries really soft, like it stays really soft and really pliable. Yeah, it works really good.
Tiffany had a comment. Tiffany's Quilting Life.
Mm-hmm.
I've had issues with seam tape on 80/20 batting. My iron, even on low, melts any unnatural fiber in the batting. On my iron with cotton, I have no issues.
Tiffany said that she's had some issues with using the batting seam tape on batting that's not 100% cotton. This is Hobbs 80/20. I only use Hobbs batting, the 80/20, the wool, and the cotton wool blend. And I've never had an issue with it, so I don't really know what to say. But it works fine. I set my iron for whatever, it's just at cotton, and I don't leave it very long either. I kind of put it down, count to 3 or 4 in my head, and move it along, and move it along, and move it along. So I don't leave it there for very long. It doesn't need much time for the fusing to melt and sink. So I don't know. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. Are you holding it there a long time? I'm wondering. Anyways, try it again. Try it just on a scrap piece, but don't hold your iron there for very long. Just count to 3 or 4 and then move along. Don't stay in the same place too long, and see if that helps.
Linda had a question.
Mm-hmm.
To England, what do you suggest for polyester wadding that can't be ironed?
Total polyester, I would probably just lay it up, do what I did with the cutting to make sure it's all nice and straight, and whip stitch it. Because polyester, just polyester, you will melt. Yeah. Yeah. I should have prefaced that with it needs to have cotton in it. Sorry about that. But you can do it the same way, right? Like just lay it up on the table or whatever surface you've got here, just butt it up against the thing and just lay it there. There's no need to take it all off the frame to try and put it together. Use that as a work surface.
Tiffany said no, about 2 seconds.
Well, that's shorter than what I leave it on. I honestly don't know what to say, Tiff. I don't have it melt on my 80/20, so that's weird. I'm not sure. I don't have an answer. I'm sorry. I'm not very helpful, am I?
Sue Frisk wants to know if you happen to teach online classes.
Sue Frisk is asking if I teach online classes. Hi, Sue. I do, actually. I have a set of classes on my website. It's called Free Motion Skill Builder Series, and there's different sort of levels, and it's not levels as in beginner, intermediate, or advanced. It's the full program is everything. And then the smaller ones are basically what I did was I created a sampler quilt with 12 blocks. And it started off as a block of the month, but instead of learning the block of the month, you were learning, it was much more about the quilting. So each month, the block got 3 different ways to quilt it. So I did a traditional way of quilting, a modern way of quilting, and what I called a freestyle, which is like more my style, sort of whimsical. And then I turned it into a whole skill builder thing. So on the website, you can either get the entire class, which is the piecing instructions for the sampler quilt, and then it's all the written instruction, drawing tutorials for all 3 styles of quilting. So the traditional, the freestyle, and the modern. Or you can buy it as just the traditional version, or just the modern version, or just the freestyle version. If your quilting tastes are more streamlined, and say you're a modern quilter and you're not interested in feathers or curved cross hatching or anything like that, then you can do just the modern one, or the freestyle one is, like I said, more sort of whimsical. And you don't have to make the whole quilt either. When I was doing the videos, it also comes with a whole collection of videos. I think there's 45 in there. It's a lot. It's a lot. I was doing them as runners. So I would do the 3 star blocks, and each block has a different way of quilting in it. So you don't have to make a quilt. You could just make runners or whatever, or don't make the quilt at all. Just use all the lessons and education on your own quilts. You don't have to make the quilt. So yeah, so that's on there on my website, and it's there all the time. There's no ending. It's not a you buy it and you only have it for 6 weeks or a month or whatever. You have access to it for all time. Thanks. Okay, so let's do our backing. We are going to do some free motion stuff in these live demos for those of you who are free motion quilters. I promise we're going to do some drawing and some doodling in a couple weeks, okay? If that interests anybody. All right, so I've come to the end. I fixed my batting, and I'm really excited because now I have my batting. And then I advance it up, and now my backing's too short. I should ask for a measuring tape for Christmas. Maybe. Okay, so in this scenario, this is the way I do it. Obviously, we can't quilt to the bottom, and we've got too much here. There's no way we can make this happen, okay? We've got about 6 inches, maybe 7 inches more quilt than we have backing, so we have to fix it, okay? I'm going to roll my very long batting now that I've added to it. And I'm going to roll it and the quilt top up and get it out of my way. Now, this is a personal thing for me. If you get to the bottom, generally you're not miles out. So if we seam this, it's not like the seam's going to be a third of the way into the quilt or a half of the way into the quilt and make sense. It's going to be right at the very bottom, right? So instead of attaching it to the very bottom here and having that seam this far from the bottom edge, and then you end up with like a lumpy bottom right near where your binding is, I figure I'm already short. So I may as well make it a little bit shorter and get this seam further up into the backing than right down at the bottom, okay? Is there a question?
Yeah. Virgie wants to know, is it okay to leave the needle down when you advance the quilt?
I always leave my needle down. Are you doing a pantograph? If you're advancing with a pantograph, Virgie asked if it was okay to leave the needle down when you're advancing the quilt. With pantographs, with my method of doing pantographs, you have to leave your needle down in the quilt when you advance because you're watching the laser light to go from the number 1 to the number 2. If you haven't seen that video, Virgie, go and watch it because I explain how I advance a pantograph. To be perfectly honest, I do quite often. I'm paying attention, but especially if I'm free motion quilting as well and I get to the end and I want to advance it up and baste, I leave my needle down on the edge and I advance it back a little bit, smooth everything out, my batting and my quilt top and all that kind of stuff, and then I just go right from where I was and I baste down that side, lift my needle, break my thread, and then I baste over here and then I continue quilting. So you just be mindful. You have to make sure that you're not paying attention, because if your needle is down and you go back and you run into here, something's going to rip, right? So just be careful. But yeah, I do it. Good question. Okay, so I've moved this out of the way, and like I said, especially if you're only an inch or so short and you have to add some, rather than adding that seam right at the very bottom, so it's only this far or this far or this far away from the bottom of your quilt, I'm going to attach it a little bit higher up. I'll use a larger piece of batting, but I'll add it back a little bit so it's not sitting right at the bottom. Okay? So my first thing to do is I'm going to use my channel lock. Now on this Millie, I have electronic channel locks. If you don't have electronic channel locks, you probably have a manual channel lock. With the APQS machines, there's a horizontal channel lock on the back of the machines. With Millie, she's got electronic ones, okay? So I'm going to put my machine back in this space somewhere, because that's going to actually put this seam about this far from the bottom of my quilt, and then that way it's not going to look like I had to add backing to the bottom of my quilt. You know what I mean? It might hopefully look like it was part of the design process. So I'm going to stitch a line all the way across. I'll put my channel lock on. I'll come a little forward just a little bit. Needle down, needle up. Now I'm using bright yellow thread because I want you to be able to see it. And had my camera at the back actually be working, you'd be able to see it from this side too. So I apologize, I don't know what's happening. And I'm just going to stitch a line all the way across. So now I have a nice even horizontal line to attach, to line my fresh piece up to. Okay, move that out of the way. I'm going to attach a chunk of red so that it's easier to see. So I've got this big piece of red. I've already cut it so that it's the same width. And I'm going to bring this forward a little bit so it's easier to reach. So I'll bring this forward. It was funny, I had a customer in here the other day, and she was quilting, and this happened to her. So we had a bit of a giggle, and I had her come back the next day and with more backing, and we did this method. So I said to her she didn't need to watch the live tonight because she already got the lesson yesterday. It happens to everybody, and it's just fine, you know. It's not fun, but it's fine. All right, so I have some pearl head pins, and I've got my backing. So my backing's the same width as this, and then I've got a nice length. Don't be stingy. It was already short. We don't want to just make it to the bottom. Just give yourself some room to breathe, okay? Anytime you're doing something like this and you've got pins anywhere close, make sure that stuff is away, and make sure you are in your head counting how many pins you've taken out. You don't want to leave a pin in the quilt, okay? Better yet, have somewhere close by that you can put the pins so you're not mucking with the pins on the quilt top, okay? All right, so I'm going to take the one edge, right sides together. So we've got the right side under here, so we're going to take the right side of our backing, and I'm going to bring a pin, and I'm going to line up, and I can feel it with my finger. I'm going to line up the edge of that extra backing with that line of stitching. I can actually feel with my finger that they're touching, okay? I'm then going to take another pin just to hold the weight. I'm going to take another pin and stick a pin up here. You can use your side clamps if you want as well. I've already got pins right here, so I've stuck a pin up here, and that's holding the weight of it for me at the moment, okay? Now I can put my clamp on, because that's actually going to help hold the weight as we move it along, okay? I'm holding this side, and I'm going to bring this to another point, not too far away, and I can feel the stitching with my finger, so I know that the edge of my fabric, keep them in a bowl so you know where they are. They're a wonderful tool, but they're dangerous if they're inside a quilt. I lost my edge. There we go. So again, so I just sort of, I can feel it, that it's touching that stitching. I'll do a couple across. I'm leaving a pretty big space because I just want to get them on there, and then I'll go back in a minute and we'll put a few more on. Is this making sense so far? Can everybody see okay? I know I'm missing a camera. That camera angle was perfect. I worked really hard on getting that second camera angle just right. But the powers that be only want us to use one at a time today, and I don't know why. Okay. And then one on this side here. Okay. Again, I'm going to slide my fingers up there, and we're going to put a pin back here. That's going to help hold the weight for a minute, and then I'll use my clamp, and that will actually hang onto it for me pretty good. Okay. Now I'm going to stick a few more pins in because I want to make sure that I have a nice solid join there. I don't want it floppy, okay? And it's okay if this takes 15 minutes. Don't rush it. Just take your time. And I'm putting the pins close to the edge. So they're not going to do you any good up here, way back here, because as we come across with the machine, the backing on the bottom still is able to move. So you want to make sure that you're putting your pins right so that they're in the very edge of that backing fabric that's underneath. Few more. So how many of you out there have had to do this before? Have you ever tried it? Or have you taken your quilts off the frame and patched your backing and then put it back on the frame? What do you say? Here we go. So that's enough. That's lots. That's probably too much, but that's fine. Better too many than not enough. And then the only other thing I do, especially depending on how big this back piece is, I'm just going to kind of run my hands up underneath here, and I'm going to stick some pins through the top here. And again, keep count of how many you have, because we don't want the backing puddling on the frame and getting caught up in the carriage, right? So you want to make sure you've got a hold of that. If it was really long, I would actually pull it to the back, pull it back there and go to the back and stick some pins in the back. But normally we're not using a piece of fabric that big when we're doing this, because we don't get it that short. Just keep an eye on where you're putting your pins, okay? There we go. All right. That's good. So my backing is flat underneath there. I've got it tacked up there so it's not hanging and going to get caught anywhere. And now we're going to use the machine, and we're just going to stitch our seam allowance. I'm going to go about 3/4 of an inch. You don't need a whole inch, maybe 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch from this line, from this stitch line, is where I'm going to stitch the next one, and I'm going to use my channel lock for that, okay? So I'm going to start here. And we are going to take our pins out before we get to them, all right? Channel lock on. I like to do a little back stitch here just to secure the seam while we're working. And then just as I get to it, I'm going to pull my needle or my pin out. Normally, to be honest, I drop them on the table. So that's what I'm going to do, because that's what I'd do if I was here by myself. So as I pull them out, I just drop them back on the back of my table. I've got my hand is sort of following. That helps everything feed together nicely. Don't take the chance and try to stitch over these pins, okay? Stop when you get there. It's worth the extra second. And then when you start to get to the middle, you don't even have to stop. You can just keep going. Little back stitch right there just to make sure it doesn't come apart. You should have scissors. I just rip it. or pull it, tear it. And then I'm going to take all of these pins out, making sure we get them all out. There we go. And then I'm going to cut along that stitching line, the original stitching line. I'm going to cut right on that thread. It's going to give me about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. There we go. Then we're going to take these clamps off. And we'll wind it back, and then we're going to attach our new bottom of our new backing to our frame. There we go. Sure.
She said, would it help to keep things super flat if you were to use the ruler base while doing this? And what's the best stitch, 10 or 12 per inch?
I don't use the ruler base only because I like to be able to push. As I'm coming along, I like to walk my fingers. Oh, you can't see that. Just one second. I'll show you this. I'll show you this in a second, Tiffany. Tiffany's asking if it's better to use the ruler base when you do this to keep it flat. You could try it, whatever works for you. Personally, I like to be able to walk my fingers behind it. It helps the fabric feed in. And if you've got your ruler base on, then it's a flat surface and it's harder to do that. So then you're going to be trying to like sort of hold on to it and sort of pull it. Do you know what I mean? So as you're walking along, and I do this when I baste my edges too. Whatever direction I'm going with my machine, my hand is always behind it, walking behind it to kind of help the fabric in underneath. I don't want to say pull, but you're sort of just walking your hand and it's sort of helping ease the fabric in and it helps keep it straight. So that's why I don't use a ruler base for that. But give it a try. And if it works for you, then that's great, you know? I'm going to send this back and I'm going to let it wind back just until I can see the bottom. Now look at all that beautiful backing fabric and all that room we have. And my seam is way back here. It's not right here. Right? We didn't just sort of put a patch in it. It actually looks like maybe that was supposed to be there, especially if you don't have matching fabric. If you don't have any of your original backing fabric left. So I'm going to do that. Actually, I'm just going to cut my batting off because now it's 1,000 miles too long. So I'm going to get rid of that. Here we go. And then I'll get my leaders positioned again. And then we'll attach this. Now as I attach it, I'm watching how it's draping, because you want to make sure that you're putting it back on so that your backing is still going to sit nice and flat, right? So you want to watch that you don't have it tweaked. Hopefully you can see that. And you don't want it sort of higher on one side and all dippy on the other. So you want to watch it so that it looks nice and even for you. Bring that one up a little bit more. There we go. And I'm not worried about this rough edge down here because it won't matter. Those back on, and then we're going to wind it back because we need to press it. You don't want to leave a big lumpy seam in there. Now I have a bit of a trick. It's a hack trick. I use, where is it? Hopefully my iron is still hot. I use a chunk of roll from a batting roll. I thought there was, it's okay, I thought there was something crawling on it. It's not, it was just a little piece of fluff. This is just off a batting roll. I just cut a chunk of this off there so it's easy to handle. And I'm going to use that on the bottom. I'm going to put it under here. And as I go across to press, I'm just going to rest my iron on that, and then I can push because I'm pushing against the cardboard, but I'm not going to burn my hands. The steam's not, no heat's going to come near my hands, but it gives a nice hard surface to press this down, and you'll get a really nice crisp open seam. So I start at one end, open my seam, and I just walk along using the batting roll as my press thing. Nice, hey? Look how nice and flat that is. And I couldn't feel any of the heat, so I didn't burn anything. My hand I'm talking about. And there we go. We can now put this all back on here, tuck it back under, smooth it all out, baste it, and carry on. There. And that's it. That's all there is to it. It's super easy. Super easy. Ta-da! All right. Does anybody have any questions?
Virgie had another question.
Okay.
Did you ever hear of Mondo Clips? Another style of red snappers.
I have not heard of, Virgie asked if I'd ever heard of Mondo Clips. I have not. Are they like a dowel clamping system, like these ones? These are red snappers. I also have leader grips here. They do the same thing, they're just a different brand. But I have not heard of Mondo Clips. Donna asked what brand of cordless iron I was using and does it work? Well, it works great and it was cheap. I got it at Canadian Tire. For those of you in the States, that's just it's an automotive kind of store. I'm sure you could find them at Home Depot or Walmart or wherever. It's a Panasonic. I can actually unplug it now. It's a Panasonic cordless iron, and the reason I bought this was specifically to do this for my rental customers when this happens. Because I used to try and, I was looking for an extension cord and trying to drag the iron across and everything, and then I found this. It was pretty cheap, actually. It's a Panasonic NI-WL600. And it's you know what? It's pretty good. It's really little. It's really lightweight, but it's got steam. You can blast your steam. You can squirt the water as well. You can turn it off, I think. I think you can turn, yeah, you can turn the steam off completely. And then it comes with a little, there's a little cover. Oh, here it is. It comes with this little plastic cover that locks. Like that. So yeah, it works. It works well for the job. I mean, I've used it for actually pressing things, and it presses quite nicely. It gets good and hot. Just take the lid off it while it's super hot. I don't want the lid on there. But yeah, it's good. It's just a Panasonic one. You can probably get it anywhere. Like I said, I bought it at Canadian Tire. It was on sale. I think I might have paid $40 for it. So it was good. Anyone else? Okay. So we're good? All right. If anybody else doesn't have any questions, I just want to say thank you for coming. Again, sorry about Monday. Next week's live will be on Monday, so I have 3 days to prepare for Monday. But it'll be good, and we'll have fun. And again, thanks for coming, thanks for waiting, and thanks for showing up on a Friday night. I'm sure there's lots more other funner things. That's not a word. Funner's not a word. Don't use that word. I'm sure there's lots of other things you could be doing, but I appreciate you coming here and hanging out with me while I show you how to do this. So I hope it helped. And yeah, we will see you Monday. Hopefully I will have figured out whatever happened today with my cameras, because there are 4 of them set up here. And I don't know. The techie world just didn't want to work with me tonight. But it's all good. It's all good. So have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Happy quilting. And hopefully we'll see you Monday. All right? Good night, guys.